All right, so I think I can see Chris. Are they doing?
Hi, good morning or good
Good morning,
afternoon.
Ade. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon, rather. Also David.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
Hello.
David. Thank you for joining us today. We have Adaha.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm here.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. And lastly, we have Iskren Lilo.
Hello, good afternoon. Now I'm unmuted.
Thank you very much for joining us today. All right, good day, everyone. To distinguished guests, colleagues, and partners from all around the world. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to a special event held in commemoration of the 2025 AMEC Measurement Month. This is an event that is sponsored and brought to you by P Plus Measurement Services. This is a global period that is dedicated to advancing best practices in measurement, evaluation, and evidence-based communication. This year's theme, as brought to us by the team at P Plus Measurement Services, from output to outcomes, measuring what matters. Today's conversation aims to invite us to reflect on fundamental shifts happening across our profession. It also challenges us to move beyond counting activities and reporting what we have done, and instead focus on the more important parts, the deeper and the more meaningful questions of what difference have we made with our campaigns. As communicators, strategists, and impact-driven organizations and individuals, we know that true success is not just defined by the volume of our efforts, but by the value of the results we get at the end of the day. Today's conversation will help us explore how to strengthen our frameworks, how to refine our indicators, and apply measurements in ways that drive clarity, accountability, and of course, long-term impact. I would like to welcome us again to today's session, and I hope we enjoy it. But before we jump into the session, I just want to give a quick career summary for our guests. I'll also give them the opportunity to do that for themselves. This event has brought together an exceptional lineup of thought leaders within the industry, innovators, as well as practitioners who continuously shape the future of communication, measurement, strategy, and impact across the globe. It is my honor to introduce to you all today. First off, we have with us here Amber Doherty, a value and impact consultant at Big Value Marketing, where she helps organizations connect communication efforts to measurable business outcomes. She serves on IPR Measurement Commission and Elevate program, contributing global best practices in communication measurement. Amber is also a teaching assistant at the McMaster University MCM program and a respected thought leader and speaker in global measurement community. Next, we have Chris Wangawa, a leading PR strategist and host of the PR Safari podcast. He was recently named amongst PR's top 30 in PR for 2024. He's pioneering Africa's first AI-powered newsroom and is the creator of the theory of experiential communication. As a leader of CPR and GNIAS, he has advised over 70 brands and continues to shape the industry through innovation, teaching, and thought leadership. Joining us as well today, we have Adedoyin Jayesimi, communications advisor and also the co-founder at Comms Avenue, a Pan-African network of more than over 1,800 practitioners, with 13 years experience. She has led major projects for organizations such as the Gates Foundation, Luminate, a chartered PR practitioner, certified SCMP. She holds a master's degree from IE Business School and has been recognized amongst WIMCA's top 50 most influential women in marketing and communication. We also have with us here David Akinfenwa. He's the author of the Public Relations Playbook and the head of corporate communications at Seller. A seasoned PR professional, he has steered successful campaigns for brands including First Delivery, Vendada, and ALX, to name but a few. Listed amongst Nigeria's top 50 most influential PR professionals, he is also the founder of J&B Communications, where he supports brands in driving impact through strategic storytelling, meaningful engagement. Our next guest, we have Adawa Njimanzi, award-winning PR consultant and founder of Nova Media and Communications, one of Nigeria's fastest-growing SMEs. With over 12 years experience, she has led impactful campaigns for Africa Fashion Week Nigeria, Total Energies, and even the Afrima Awards. Adawa is a member of NIPR, CIPR UK, and the Recording Academy, and she was named amongst GLG PR Power List Top 50 for 2024. And finally, we meet Iskren Lilov, Head of Marketing and Communications at RuPoint, part of the Mokrak family. He leads the organization's brand strategy, communications, and partnership arm. Ivan is the creator of the Circular Marketing Model, an innovative framework redefining marketing in the AI era. He lectures in B2B marketing and strategic communications as the AMEC Comms Task Force lead. He plays a key role in advancing global media intelligence and PR practices. We want to jump into today's conversation and today's session. But before we do that, I want to hear from our guests, just a quick career rundown, where it all began, probably our educational backgrounds, to where we are today. And we want to see that shift, what really drove you to what you currently do right now. And so we'll kick off with Amber.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm located in Toronto. I started, as many communicators do, in journalism and then moved into communications. I spent the first 10 years of my communications career working in healthcare communications, so at the hospital level, at the research and education level, and then finally at the government level. I did my Master's of Communications Research, as was mentioned, at McMaster University, based in Hamilton, and Syracuse University, and I focused there on demonstrating the impact of communications. It was something that at that point I had become sort of increasingly frustrated with the fact that we weren't doing it on a regular basis, and I wanted to understand how we could do it. And that pivoted me into my current role at Big Valley Marketing, where I do work to connect the work that we're doing with our clients, the tactical efforts, to business outcomes. So very excited to be here and be part of this discussion. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you very much for that, Amber. It's so nice to have you here with us today. Next up, let's hear from Chris, the career rundown.
Thank you. Once again, I think many of people who have followed me have known that I've been performing artist since I was 9 years old, and going through many hands who are creatives, tragedy writers and playwrights and directors, comedy writers, playwright directors. And after that, I became a writer director myself, joining the theater and entertainment industry. After which I realized it didn't have the best of the resources I would love to, or lifestyle I would want. So I decided I wanted to do something that could capture all my interests, being writing, directing, managing the platforms and many other things. And so the only course that would deliver that was going to be communication and public relations. So I did an undergraduate in communication and public relations and started working in an agency before I even graduated. But as I was doing this, I realized that there was more that needed to be done. So I was wondering whether to do a master's in communication or a master's in something else, because I was curious in communication. Thereby, I went to study master's in knowledge management and innovation, because I felt I needed to be an entrepreneur, which meant competitive advantage and stuff like that. Hence where I am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris, for that. Let's hear from Adawa.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I started my career, or my passion for media, basically started off in high school. And I've always been very passionate about understanding the dynamics of the media, how to come up with the stories. So for me, my story is heavily driven by storytelling and being able to control the narrative. And that was one of the places where that passion kind of kicked off. And I was lucky to have advisors who, when I would share, because it was just a case of having scattered thoughts, and not having an idea of how to put my thoughts together. And so when I would speak to my personal advisors then in school, they would say, "Oh, this is the career trajectory, and this is how we can guide you." And so that basically kicked off my love for the media. And at that time, I didn't fully understand what public relations was. I didn't even know there was a career called public relations. I was just on the verge of going into the university to go study law. And that conversation basically redirected the course of my profession today. And I basically started my career in the music industry as a music publicist before switching more towards the corporate side. And I always say this every time I get invited to speak. I did learn a lot from University of YouTube, because it guided a lot. There was just so much to learn, and especially coming from where I was, where we didn't have a lot of older professionals at that time speaking about the profession. So University of YouTube was one of my guiding lights, and that kind of also helped me define the journey and streamline it to what it is today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Adana, for sharing that with us. I think we hear from Adedoyin next.
Okay. Hello again, everyone. Thank you to the team for the invitation to speak. I pretty much started my journey very cluelessly. Started as a writer, got offered a role as a brand communications manager, and I had no idea what that was. And just like Adao just said, YouTube, mine started with Google actually, just Google searching, trying to really understand, okay, what am I supposed to be doing in this role? And what I really liked about working in communications is it aligned with my natural abilities, and being someone that is very, very hungry for knowledge, I started to teach myself, but that desire to want to know more. And in 2020, I went for my master's. I studied law as my undergrad, and I went for a master's in marketing and corporate communications. And I realized, wow, I've been winging and doing funny things in my career. And that awakening for me, because knowledge is power, knowledge brings confidence. And that knowledge really sharpened or shaped my career trajectory into ensuring that I'm doing my work in communications well, but delivering value. And because I'm very passionate about sharing what I know, I decided that, you know what, I also want to give this knowledge or share this knowledge with as many people as possible. And so I started a YouTube channel where I teach on communication topics, train communication teams and executives across the continent, just so that people can really understand the value that communications bring. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, Adedoyin, for sharing that with us. Next up, we will hear from Iskren.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very honored to be here among such great speakers. So I'm joining you today from Bulgaria. My journey isn't too different than the other speakers. So I was also very curious about storytelling. I really liked to experiment with many different projects. Ever since school, I was writing, I was creating. So I felt the creative and storytelling passion in me. So I pursued a master's and a bachelor and master's in media and culture in the University of Amsterdam, the Netherlands, which was then, and I think still ranked, the #1 university in the world for communications. And then there is where I learned that that is what I want to do. First of all, my first professional experiences were in the field of NGOs. So I led media and communications practices for a few NGOs in the Netherlands. And then I transferred into the tech industry, leading to me joining GrowPoint about 2.5 years ago already, and getting them from a local Irish media monitoring agency into a global media intelligence brand, which is now part of the McCrack family, the third biggest PR software company in the world. So that has been what shaped my perspective. And since the last year, I've also started my private consultancy, where I do strategic marketing and consultancy for brands and individuals as private clients. And yeah, thank you very much for this.
Thank you very, very much, Lilov. Once again, thank you to all our speakers for availing us time of day. Quickly, we want to jump into the introductory segment of today's conversation, and I'm glad a lot of our speakers are starting off from, their learning curve and learning and unlearning certain things. And so the questions that I want to ease us into today's conversation with has to do with this moments, those key moments where we realized this shift and where we had to adjust to a shifting climate. And first off, I'll call on Amber once again. And you've dedicated your career to helping organizations connect communications with business outcomes. And your journey has, what would you say your journey has shaped, or how has your journey shaped your view on what truly matters when demonstrating the value of impact through measurement?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I love this question because we're all sort of, we are the effect of where we've been and what we've been through, and we all come from very different areas, right? So for me, it was really working in health communications and understanding that what we were doing was too important to not understand if it was working. So essentially, we're communicating about, care experiences, about safety protocols, about how people operate within a hospital. We're communicating about, during the COVID pandemic, about vaccines, about masking, about distancing, about all these kinds of things. In some cases, it can be life or death communication. And I started asking the question about, well, how do we know this is effective? And people didn't really want to have the conversation about what we were actually trying to achieve. And I was like, wait a second, we're not just doing this to do it, right? We're doing it for an effect. And so that's really what made me tune into the fact that what we were doing needed to be strategic. It needed to be aligned with what we were aiming to achieve. And that's held true. I believe that what we do in communications is just far too critical to not understand if it's effective. If it's not effective, it's better to know earlier than later so that you can do something to change it.
Thank you very much, Amber, for that. I will hold on to the word effective. And while I move on to Chris, I think I will ask you for the intersection, what in your work, what's the intersection between innovation, storytelling, strategy, right? These three things. And how has your journey across academia, theater, communications shaped your perspective on the evolving meaning of outcome in strategic communications? Chris, did you get the question?
So yes, I got the question. I was saying, as we may all know, innovation is at the heart of creating new ideas. So it will be the processes, it will be products, it would be whatever it thing, services, some things. The bottom line is new things. That is combined with the fact that stories have to be told. And stories have to be told in the sense that we're not just telling because we have platforms to use, but we are telling stories of development. So how relevant is a story? How do we tell the story while entertaining and hooking people? And at the end of the day, we have this very important concept called strategy. And strategy meaning philosophy. Once you understand strategy as what makes you get ahead of everybody else, is when you begin to realize, so we're talking about competitive advantage here. How do I gain competitive advantage? I've got to build products that nobody does better than our company does. We've got to do things, do better processes, have more efficiency, better than everybody else. So whatever it is we do comes back to what are those new ideas the organization is creating that makes the products better, that makes the services better than anybody else. And that essentially goes to speak to communication with them, which then talks about changing behaviors, changing things, increasing awareness, the basic things that need to be achieved in communication. So eventually you come back to academia, therefore, and you ask yourself, what is it you need to understand or to prepare yourself to be able to deliver these things? You've got to begin to choose the kind of approaches or the kind of material you want to interact with. You've got to, it's not just about, first of all, fine, it's good to understand because you are going to the school of knowledge to be able to have a background, but it is not enough. It's got to come in the aspect of curiosity. And even though it's about curiosity, you have to tie in the aspects of theater, for instance, where I was brought up in, and where I was brought up was you are competing with the next person. You are competing with people who have 20 years experience in writing and directing, and you are being pit against, if you're not in the top 3, winning, you are not recognizable. So you've got to do very wonderful hooking performances that keep people on the edge and be able to consume whatever it is you're doing and say, wow. And they've got to talk about you and what you did forever and ever, which means then that when you bring those concepts into the organization, into the corporate, you are now saying that we've got to create new things and new ideas and new products so that then we are able to be talked about forever and ever and ever. And as you do that, you begin to ask yourself, what are the examples? You would be talking about Apple, for instance, with a new, almost every year they're coming up with a new product. You've got to talk about your Elon Musk and every new thing they're making and how grand those things are, because it is about the new idea. It is from that point of view that my way of thinking comes in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris, for shedding light on that and really breaking it down. Speak on innovation and staying ahead of the trend, basically, and talking about competition and really winning in this business. I want to talk to Adawa. You've built a multi-award-winning communications agency that is driven majorly by measurable impact. What has been the most defining moment for you in your career that revealed to you the importance of outcome-driven communication?
Thank you for that. I would say that, so personally for me, I never really have the most defining moments. I see every moment in PR as defining, depending on how you say it. But I'm going to use an example of one of our clients that we've done work for. I would say one of the biggest challenges that we've had at some point in an agency is we worked with a music brand, and it was a top music brand globally, and they came to launch in Africa. That was in 2021. They came to launch in Africa, and we were to handle PR for them in certain focus countries in Africa, and about 8 countries, because we were going to work directly with the head of East and West Africa, and she had to manage 8 countries. So we were going to work with her within those 8 countries. And what that did for us, and why I also see it as a defining moment, it wasn't just about announcing the arrival of this music giant. It was also understanding that, when you're talking about music is universal, but it wasn't, you're going to different countries that people never really would pay attention to when it comes to music out of Africa. And you are interacting with different stakeholders who probably for years have been trying to get attention of this music giants in these other parts of the world. And now you're here, but you have to understand that, and which is one of the things that we were trying to do with the music company, was what would work in America or what would work in the UK is not what's going to work in Ghana. What would work in Ghana is not what's going to work in Nigeria. So we had to take our time to understand each of the countries that we had to focus on, how best to communicate with the necessary stakeholders that we needed to communicate with, the type of activities that would work in these countries. And it's just like what piggyback off what Chris mentioned. You have to understand that with each of the countries or with each of the places that you're going to launch, they have their own innovative styles. They have the strategy that would work for them. They have different things, and so this was very defining for us, because it was meetings upon meetings, understanding these different needs, understanding how best to launch the campaign in each of these countries, understanding how best to ensure that we're not just launching campaign for launching campaign, but we're also taking in the sentiments, the perspective of each of the stakeholders, and fine-tuning that to say, okay, this is what the offer is, and this is what we're looking to achieve within year 1, this is what we're looking to achieve within year 2. How best can we come in to work with you? And also to ensure that the results that we take back to the clients were always positive, even if negative, but we're willing to go back to the drawing board. And so I would say that that was one of our defining moments, because within the first year, we had gotten over 20 million impressions from media interviews, partnerships, stakeholder management. And that I would say was one of the very challenging moments for us, or defining moment for us as an agency. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adara. In your where you were speaking, I think you stressed on tailor-fitting campaigns to understand the nuances that exist, especially when dealing with different countries and different geopolitical environments. Also, paying attention to the feedback, and as we go, we've listened to 3 speakers, and already it's clear that they are shifting our understanding from just the numbers to actually understanding the value and focusing more on the value of what it is we get. Adedoyin, I want to talk about the work you do at the Comms Avenue, which focuses on capacity building and knowledge sharing for communications professionals across Africa. What inspired you to focus on helping communicators better understand and demonstrate impact?
Okay, thank you so much. Like I said in the intro, when I went for my master's in 2020, I like to segment my career, me before the master's and me after the master's. So me before the master's, I was winging it, just very, very tactical, doing the activity. Yes, I was strategic, but I really wasn't thinking about how this is adding value or how this is going to be defined or measured. And then me afterwards realizing that, oh, wow, there is so much more to strategy. There's so much more to articulating the value of what communications is bringing to the table. So some of the professionals on this call, you're at the stage where people are asking you at the end of the year, what has comms done? What have you added to the bottom line? And sometimes it looks like, oh, we can't really trace it. The things that we do is intangible. And so it's learning all of those things that then inspired me to say, you know what, I want to be able to share this knowledge with others. While I was having a career transition, I had an agency that I shut down. And for some time, I was just posting on LinkedIn, just sharing my lessons. And I realized that, oh, there were so many other people that had those questions as well. And that's how the Comms Avenue started. And when I got this new, should I say new revelation, they were my first guinea pig. So it's like, okay, you know what? We have this community. I'm going to be sharing some of these lessons with them. But most importantly, one of the reasons why we have that community is that we want to build the competencies of communications professionals across Africa with best practices, knowledge, and tools. And so we give them that access through mentorship and through training. And so for me, the more I see communications professionals doing the job right, because we have to be honest with ourselves when we talk about, oh, people don't value comms. The truth is that a lot of us aren't doing the work as effectively as we should. But if we are upskilled in terms of our competencies, our knowledge, and our deliverables, then it's easier for the people, whether it's your senior leaders or your CEO, to see that this thing is actually delivering results. So for me, that willingness or that passion to see people getting the right results and having a really rewarding and thriving career in communications is what keeps us going. And I'm really proud of our community members that run with the training and the knowledge that they gain to do impactful work across the continent.
Thank you very much, Adedoyin, for that, for bringing us into that example, your post-masters and pre-masters. I saw Iskren agreeing with what she said, and my question for you ties majorly into that. You've been also instrumental in promoting innovation, and within that media intelligence and marketing and measurement space, how has your professional journey shaped your perspective on outcome-based measurements in the rapidly evolving space?
Yep. Well, thank you. First of all, I really agree with what was said by all the speakers so far. In terms that we are no longer measuring simple numbers, simple data points, but we are moving into outcomes and impact, which is the most important part. And I would like to share a really favorite quote of mine from Professor Jim McNamara, that impressions are not the number of people you impressed. So this is quite impactful already. This is something that I learned throughout my media intelligence career, is that what I would like to see as a CCO, for example, for a company would not be to have the most impressions out of my competitors. It would be to reach the audience that I would like, the target audience that I would like to see, and to get those impressions from them and to actually get actions. So how we do that is with more complex measurement tools, such as what Macra can offer or any other competitor on the market, is you can track communications outcomes and KPIs and link them together with your business objectives and data from other business data points. For example, from your website or from generative AI. This is something new that we are now doing, measuring how your brand and your product appears in generative AI answers like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. So all of these are now pushing the barrier of what could be measured. So we don't have the situation of saying to our CEO, oh no, communication is intangible, we cannot measure it. Because if we say that to our CEO, then our CEO will say, okay, if you cannot prove it, I will not give you the budget for it. Next year you have less budget, because these are people who understand finance, these are people who understand business, but not all of them understand the value of communication and how communication can build up communities, fan bases, followings of your product or brand, and anything about on that scale. So really what my learning throughout my entire professional experience has been is not to chase records, not to chase numbers, but to chase impact, and to try to receive qualitative feedback of all your actions, all your campaigns, rather than just stay within the reach of the quantitative numbers and just see a graph go up. Because maybe the graph will go up, but then if you go into other graphs around the business, such as profit, revenue, retention, the graph may go down. And the only way to have true success is to link those graphs and to have them all go up together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kern. From what you said, talking about feedback to mostly stakeholders, that is explaining to them the role that communications, PR especially, plays in basically keeping top of mind for the brand. And I think that is essential. And David, I think I want you to jump in on this conversation, with your experience spanning storytelling, media strategy, even reputation management. What has been the biggest lesson for you in connecting communications output to tangible business outcomes?
Thank you very much. Honestly, for me, I would say my biggest lesson has been that communications only, would show with value when it's directly impacted to, or it's directly tied to what the business is trying to achieve or what the business goals are. So it's important that as communications experts, that we always have in the back of our mind that our comms it's not supposed to be like a standstill or a standalone initiative. It should be directly involved with or directly tied to the business goal. And it's either we are doing it from the point of, are we trying to get revenue for the business, or we're trying to build the reputation of the business in terms of like the market share, the voice, and what have you. So it's great that it's important that we always have it at the back of our mind, because we always try to focus on the outputs, and we are always very carried away with the numbers, with the press platforms that we are on, with the articles that we are writing, the storytelling that we are doing. And I have come to learn that all of this do not really matter if we are not driving any conversation, if we are not shifting any behavior in the public, or if we are not changing perception, or if we are not improving the revenue of the company. Because at the end of the day, these are the questions that the management would ask of us. What is the impact of our work? What have we been doing? So it's important that we take PR from the point of not just visibility, but direction. So every piece of communication that we are putting out must point somewhere. More user must trust us. It also must be geared towards better positioning for the brand. We must also, if the goal is to get investors, we must try and also do do the positioning in a way that will attract investors to the business. The narrative, everything must be in line with what the business goal is, because that is the goal at the end of the day. So the business, we must know what the business is trying to solve, and what decision do we want the people to make after seeing our comms and our copies. So, and how does this initiative, this PR campaigns, this communications efforts, how do they support the growth and the trust long term? So these are the things that we should always put in at the back of our mind when we are approaching communications. And these are the lessons that I have also come to understand at the course of my career, and how I also, approach communication. So we need to take comms more intentional. The storytelling must be really sharper. The strategy must, be targeted to one specific thing at a time. So we are not just doing things for numbers' sake. And just as I think it was Lilo that said it. He said the impression doesn't really matter, or I can't really get how he mentioned it, but it was speaking about the fact that the impression and the numbers don't really matter. What really does matter is how many people are, reacting, or they are making a decision based off your campaign. So it's important, exactly. So it's not just the numbers of people that you impress. So it's the number of people that eventually make a decision out of the copy or the comments that you are putting at the end of the day.
Thank you very much, David, for that. After having listened to our speakers, and I think they all share one voice in urging us as PR professionals and practitioners to shift from vanity metrics and focusing on, just outdated metrics, and to actually focus on data-driven objectives and setting KPIs, and helping organizations or brands, or even ourselves in our professional career, tie our communication endeavors to actual value or actual objectives at the end of the day. To our listeners here today, if we have any questions, I would just suggest that we probably pen them down or put them in the comment box, and towards the end of today's session, the speakers will have time to deliberate or deal with those questions. And so now we want to move into more, about the trend, what is currently happening within this landscape of media and PR. And I want to hear from our speakers, and, considering the change that has, become more evident, we've all been speaking about, shifting the narrative from just numbers to actually putting value behind these numbers. And so I want to call on Chris once again. With the increasing push for measurable impact, how do you see human elements such as emotion, experience, balancing against industry's obsession with, data, numbers, and all of that?
Well, the aspects you've mentioned, the human element, creativity, emotion, and the experiences of stakeholders, can be equated to one thing: human connection. It is about the connection between the organization and what the organization does with its stakeholders. And at the heart of that, at the end of the day, you cannot do any of these things without data. And it's not just data, it is about the accuracy of data. Many times we tend to go wrong when we have data which is faulty. Once you have faulty data, there's nothing you can achieve. You are going to do what you would believe is impressive work, but you see everybody is making decisions based off of wrong data rather. So then it is a very interesting process where you're saying data, after you get the data, make sure it is accurate. Once it is accurate, do the diagnosis. What are the good things? What are the bad things? What needs improvement? What are the negative ones? And give a prescription. Hence, they say at the end of the day, the most important thing in communication is advisory. So what does that mean then is, number one, you have what we call, of course, whatever it is the organization is doing, and how the stakeholders are responding to that. How they are responding is an emotional reaction. They could hate it, they could love it, they could be passive. It is already emotional. What does that tell you? Should we continue with this? Should we, what is better? Can we even make it even more better? What is bad? Can we change it? What is passive average? Can we tweak it so that it is positive? I like to use the example of social judgment theory, which looks at, on a scale, there is 0 in the middle, there is 10 on one end, there is negative 10 on the other end, and there is somebody who is on the negative that needs to be dragged somewhere closer to 0 or surpass the 0 to the positive side. And there is somebody who is on the positive that, if you're not careful, they are going to get to the other side, or they are going to, your credits are going to dwindle. So how do you deal with all these people, where you want to retain those who are those who love whatever your organization does and what you say, and those who do not love because they love your competitor and you want to convert them? It is an emotional game, and that goes back to the data, and it is about advisory. Once you have, what I like to say, feedback from the stakeholders, or from the receiver in this case, what do you do with that feedback? You are going to analyze it as pieces of data, whether qualitative or quantitative, and you are going to find insights which you take to the management, and the management, you advise them and say, this is what we are doing, this is what the people are saying, this is what I think we need to do, so that we give them what they are asking for. It could mean that they are actually giving you innovations, or they're saying things they don't really understand, but from where you sit, when you look at these things, they are what needs to be done new. And those are new ideas that you feed management, and you follow up with management to be able to achieve those things. And guess what? Once the stakeholders look at what they advise, their responses were, whether it was sentimental, qualitative, or it was quantitative, they realize that you are listening. And they say, a friend of mine, Ruth Musembi, talks about listen, inform, act. Listen to what the stakeholders are saying. Analyze, synthesize, inform the management or the leadership of what the stakeholders are saying vis-a-vis what you think is good for what they are saying, and follow up on what you have advised, and ensure that those advisories somehow are implemented, or come up with a way to demonstrate that they have been implemented. And if not, get back to the stakeholders and tell them, look, you advised us on this, or you shared your sentiments around this, or you refused to buy our products because you didn't feel they were good enough. And so we have come back and worked on them, which is action. Or we couldn't work on them because of the dynamics. Maybe the politics or the regulatory landscape does not allow. Maybe that is where advocacy comes in, and you push it to be able to open up that side of things where the regulatory landscape allows you to be able to come up with new ways of doing things. And voila, you have emotions being captured. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris, for an in-depth analysis on that. So, Iskren, you introduced the concept of circular marketing model, which is trademarked to you. And I want to talk about that for a minute. As a new paradigm for sustainable brand engagement, how does this model challenge rather the traditional notion of measuring linear success?
Yep, thank you for this question. So the original notion behind the circular marketing model is the change in what we see audiences do right now. So back when we had the traditional marketing models, such as the marketing funnel, the most traditional thing that everybody knows about how to do marketing. These were all invented in times where audiences were behaving pretty much linear, because they didn't have too much choice. They didn't have all the spoils of the internet, AI, and a million other things producing noise around them. And they drove from interest into deepening this interest into action, meaning purchase, for example, or using a service. So that meant that marketing models were similar or based on a linear model. However, with the age of AI And with AI becoming now a dominant force, not only in search, how people search for information, but also in how people consume content, which is generated by AI in vast quantities all the time, 24/7 without sleeping. So this every market is becoming increasingly noisy, and every audience is becoming increasingly confused. That leads to a lot of audiences entering and exiting the funnel, if we can still call it a funnel, at many different times and many different stages. Some people may enter directly into the purchasing decision. Some people may enter and exit the top of the funnel a million times before they make a decision. So, and they move up and down. They don't move in a single line from intent to purchase. So that is where circular thinking about marketing comes. The thinking that prioritizes brand reputation and prioritizes engagement with your target audiences, non-stop engagement with your target audiences. The model itself has three key pillars: performance marketing, content marketing, and event marketing. Those three pillars are what drives how marketers can create activities in the circular marketing model. So from advertising, which sits in the performance marketing, but also sponsorships sit there as well, through content and its various forms and various channels that need to all be utilized all together, through events where you can have the experiential aspect of marketing. Right now, we are seeing a huge rise of this, since people are becoming disconnected with the digital, because there is so much noise in the digital space, that they are going back to being influenced by physical events, by connection with the brand. I recently attended Cannes Lions, the biggest marketing event every year, and there I spoke with the CMO of MasterCard, who told me that they are shrinking their digital advertising budget by 60%. And in the case of MasterCard, that means billions of dollars, and switching all of these 60% into experiential marketing. Okay, you may say MasterCard can afford this because there are only one competitor to MasterCard in the world, or maybe two. But that is just one extreme example of a very successful company that has realized that the digital is not worth fighting for that much right now. And if you want to build lasting connections with your audience, you need to build physical experiences as well. So that is why circular marketing goes back to the roots of experiential and includes experiential into the whole conversation. So this is pretty much a short summary of it. I will post the link in chat if you would like to learn more about the model itself, but I wouldn't like to take more time from the other speakers here. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much for that, Chris Brandon. Yes, the link will be appreciated. So I want to move on to Adaha. In your opinion, how can agencies bridge the tension between delivering quick wins and achieving measurable long-term outcomes that demonstrate value to clients?
Yeah. So as an agency owner, one of the things that I've done over the years in my career is learn. I'm very big on knowledge. I'm always trying to learn, to adapt, because there's just so much to learn. We always have new trends every year. Now, so let me tie it down to Nigeria, where we are based, right? Sometimes the quick wins that some agencies push for, sometimes these demands also come from clients, right? Clients can be very demanding and very persuasive, when they want certain things. But one of the things that I've done for myself, and one of the things that I do for the clients that I have, is I'm very big on value. So one of the first things that I do is advisory. So when we first have a client that we bring into the agency, the first thing I do is advisory. I don't care how early you want your campaign to start. You have to understand what PR entails. You have to understand what communication entails. If you do not understand that, we're not working on your brand. It might sound very unconventional, but that is very important for me, and that's very important for my agency, so that when we look at the campaign as we run through, or when it's ongoing, or even after the campaign, we're able to see where, because if you don't have an understanding of PR, it's where there's a problem. And we find that challenging every single time in Nigeria, because you have people that want quick wins, and the quick wins sometimes might get you the result, but the result might be short term. I'm very big on long-term impact. And so one of the things that I do, and I always emphasize heavily with the clients, is advisory. And also to understand the value it is that you're offering, because everyone that comes to you has value to offer. So my big focus is typically on the value. And then what is the campaign about in that moment? Because it's not just about a quick win. What is the campaign about? You have to look at the objectives that you're looking to achieve. The objectives will drive whatever campaign or whatever win that you're looking to achieve. And under your objectives, you're looking at multiple things, right? Multiple factors. For instance, time. Timing is important. Timing is absolutely important. 2 weeks ago, I had to cancel a campaign, and I had to sit down. I spent 2 days convincing the client to move it to first quarter of 2026. And the reason I had to do that was, I mean, for those that are not in Nigeria, there's just so much happening right now in Nigeria. And it would feel, when we look at the results of our research before we kick off the campaign, we would feel if we put out, it will be tone deaf to launch a campaign of that nature within the atmosphere of what we're currently going through in Nigeria. And so for me, I said to them, look, we're not looking for a quick win. If you're looking for a quick win, then Nova is not for you. If you're looking for long-term impact, behavioral change, perception management, if you're looking for brand loyalty, then you have to take the advisory. So for me, when I speak to colleagues, when I speak to potential clients, my first goal is to educate you on what PR entails. And one of the things I always say to people, PR takes time. It's not a quick win. I don't believe in quick wins. Have I done a quick win before? Early years of PR, because, like Adedoyin said, we have our pre-masters and post-masters when we were trying to basically understand the industry that we found ourselves in. But one of the things that I also one thing that I would always say to other professionals is, once you take your time and you understand the value that you have to offer, the advisory part of the services that you're offering your clients would always take precedent, because they would listen to you. When you also break it down to say, look at the results, or look at the feedback based off the research that we have, look at the timing of this, look at the objectives that we're looking to achieve, and how does it all come together to fit into, it might not work. In that way, they are more inclined to say, okay, you know what, let's take your word for it. And one of the things that I also do, again, when I look at it, why I say it's long-term, is because in that moment, like we've all said, it's not about the numbers, but it's also about how the emotions you've evoked, the way you've made people feel, the perception about the brand, the feedback that you receive, the strategy that has been implemented, and how people, like your stakeholders, have adopted it, the brand trust. So these are some of the things that I would typically push towards achieving a long-term measurable goal rather than a quick win. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adawa, for that. One thing that really stuck was you talking about really understanding what is going on currently in that space, and with the clients you gave an example of, and how the campaign, kicking off a campaign right now, would definitely seem tone deaf. And then even understanding the campaign, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to sell people who are currently going through all these things? Are we trying to sell them goods? No, they're not really thinking about that right now. And I think that's just a very beautiful analogy and a way to really bring us into understanding what that concept is. Moving on to Adedoyin, as the conversation shifts from output to outcome, which is the conversation we're currently, having, how do you define impact, within the African communications context, where challenges and opportunities are uniquely intertwined?
I think for me, impact will be communications professionals having real influence, whether it is within or outside the organization. And we have the skills and competencies to do it. Communications is not an easy thing. I know sometimes business leaders or line managers, they make it look like anybody can do it. But the reality is that not everybody can do it. We've been very good at communicating with words. And where I believe the shift is we need to start communicating with data. And so when you're doing your work, your organization wants to launch in a new market, you go and create your quote unquote tactics. Why? You haven't created a strategy. You haven't done your research. Do you even understand what the objective is? Do you even understand that Africa, for example, is not a country, but a continent? And so if you're going to Rwanda and you've been operating in Kenya before, you really need to understand the differences. And so it's really coming from that strategic perspective, using a theory of change model to say, if we want to achieve this outcome, what are the steps that we need to take and how do we get there? How do we collate our data? A lot of this data does not sit with you as communications, but how do you speak to the people that manage the CRM sales? Look at the trends. I was teaching a class a few weeks ago and I said to them, you have a lot of data right now that if you sit down, put it on an Excel sheet, look at it month on month, year on year, you will see certain trends within your organization that you would even be able to advise your organization that this course of action that you're about to take is dead on arrival. And you're not saying it from a point of sentiment, you're saying it using data, and you can actually present that data. So for me, that impact is influence. And influence, it is not far-fetched, we already have it. It's just now being more strategic, it's thinking from the end, thinking about the end from the very beginning. AMEC has an evaluation framework that I always teach with. Start with that, your objectives. Don't do objectives like, oh, we want to go viral. What exactly does that mean? We want to build, we want to improve sentiment. To what degree, to what level? Do you have the baseline data that you already need? I'm working with an organization to upskill their comms team, and I give them assignments and they come back to me and say, oh, by the end of 2025, we want to secure 2 media mentions. I said, this is the end of November. Which 2 media mentions are you going to secure in the Nigerian media by December? What exactly would you be saying in those media mentions, and why would it be relevant? And these are the things we need to be asking ourselves if we want to deliver results, if we want to take ourselves seriously. So for me, that impact question is about influence. Let us sit down and ask tough and important questions. Go back to your business leaders, go back to the organization, go back to and ask questions, leverage the other departments. We don't work in a silo, and then begin to see the communication opportunities, so that at the end of the day, you can say, based on these things that we did, this is what we achieved. We're talking about impressions, we're talking about activities. Those things are not bad. You need them. I always say that you need the impressions, you need the activities. The issue is when you stop there. The issue is when you say, oh, that's the be all and end all. What happened as a result of these things that we did? But that's tying together. That influence is really what I would like to see more communications professionals have. And we can only do that with data and measurement.
Thank you very much, Adedoyin, for that breakdown. She spoke about the strategic approach. It's not just about jumping headfirst into a campaign. Understanding what the campaign entails. Where do you want to start? Where do you want to end? What are the things you aim to accomplish from this particular campaign? Thank you once again. I want to call on David to public relations often faces the challenge of proving, ROI, which is return on investment. In your view, how can communicators better demonstrate that reputation is not just an outcome, but a business driver?
So it's interesting that we work in the industry where everybody feels like they know our job and they set ROIs for us and they expect that we meet them without even giving to context what exactly we are bringing on the table and how does it affect the business as a whole. So I think the biggest mindset shift that needs to happen for a communicator is to understand that public relations and reputation management is not short term. It's a long time investment. So it's not like a soft stuff that you just like do and then you expect to get like ROI. almost immediately. I like to think of it as an infrastructure that allows, every part of your business to function. The challenge that we often face trying to prove, ROI with marketing metrics like impressions, all of those things that are very, very like quick to note. I do feel like that is where the disconnect really happens. For instance, if you are trying to launch a campaign and you are trying to run the promotions for the campaign, and you are leveraging some of the digital platform, you pay them, right? And then they put up your content on their platforms for as long as your budget, runs for. So as your budget, expires, they pull up your content from their platform. But that is not what PR is about. That is strictly marketing, because you are paying for that visibility, and once your money is done, you get caught up. But with PR, it's a long-term investment. The narrative that you put out could have a very long impact on your brand. So we should start seeing PR and reputation not like something that we expect to just happen like that. It's built on trust. And I used to say this, that every business, right? I believe that every business needs to be built on trust. Your marketing, your promotions, I mean, they also are very relevant. But the key thing is that people are going to buy your product if they trust your product, and you cannot build trust overnight. So it takes like continuous investment. So you need to be able to invest long term on your reputation. So it's not always just showing up immediately with clicks and conversion. It shows up in the trust of the public, and also that trust is what also would drive that long-term business behavior and would impact your revenue at the end of the day. So we should track, reputation the same way we see like the financial outcomes. Let's say, for instance, now when you share the narrative of your business out there, you need to understand like what are the key message penetration amongst the key audience like. What is the sentiment movement over time? What is the share of voice in the narrative you are trying to sell to the public? These are the things that would, at the end of the day, compound to shape your narrative and to shape your reputation. So I do think that is where we need to have like the mindset shifts, and not just investing in the ROIs that is supposed to be for marketing.
Thank you very much, David. And mindset shift. Yes, you asked a very important note. And Iskren earlier noted big brand MasterCard, and the awareness of this shift is not just with the professionals or the PR practitioners themselves. Brands are also increasingly becoming aware of this shift. And so I want to talk to Amber, based on your experience and your journey. What does it mean to move from what we do to measuring what we achieve, especially given the shifts that we are currently, focusing on?
The difference between those two things is vast, but it is a mindset shift, right? It's dependent upon how you think about the work that you're doing. And often in this conversation, we're talking about the difference between being purely tactical versus being strategic. I love the idea of being an advisor and helping people understand what PR can do, and that it is long-term and it's not about quick wins. I want to use just an anecdote here. So if you think about somebody who, says that they're going to start gardening, right? I'm not a gardener, but if you say you're going to start gardening, right? You can say, like, I've spent hours watering my plants, I've weeded, I've pruned, but that's just what you did. It doesn't tell you anything about, well, did anything grow? And so I think that it is this shift about what are we actually working towards? And I think that starts with asking the question about what are we trying to get our audience to think, feel, or do differently as a result of the work that we're doing. And when you think like that, it becomes almost impossible to not then think about, okay, so these are the metrics that we need to look at, right? I think there's a big issue here because I think a lot of folks in communications, we come from different areas. It's not necessarily as drilled into us in our training that we go through that we need to think in the strategic way. We need to think more long-term, and we need to think about the audience as much as it is How do you write a press release? How do you develop relationships? And these things are important, of course, but it's that longer term thinking, and it's that connection to strategy, right? So you have to ask those questions. And so measuring what we achieve is really the difference between, you know, celebrating the fact that we got a media story and start caring about what happened after people saw it. I think that's the difference there. But it does require some work to get to that point. But I do believe that once you start thinking in that way, it just becomes impossible to not think like that and to not ask those questions.
Thank you very much, Amber. And I'm glad that even when we hear our speakers talk about this, there is the connectivity between the things they say. Like I did when you mentioned earlier, she was speaking on, you know, strategy and understanding, you know, what it is you're actually trying to achieve. And here Amber emphasizes on the mindset shift, you know, focusing on these things. It's inevitable to miss out on the key points, you know. And she also talked about how some practitioners really don't focus or aren't trained, you know, to focus on that. And that's why we have events such as this, you know, to put the word out there and, you know, get people thinking in the right direction. Once again, thank you to our speakers for sharing, you know, their 2 cents on today's conversation. But we want to move now into, you know, today's event is, you know, focusing on best practices, and we want to know how do we move forward, you know, for people here who are hearing about this for the first time, who want to adopt that mindset shift. How do they begin to move forward into that new space? How do they begin to conquer that new space? And what are the tools, ideas that you can share with them, you know, to help them conquer this space? And so I want to call on Iskren. You currently are on the AMEC Comms Task Force as its lead. And how do you see the industry's readiness to move from output-centric reporting to truly outcome-based evaluation?
Thank you. Very good question. Here we need to make some distinction. I cannot say for the industry as a whole, because there is vast differences between regions. You may see that communicators in some regions are already pretty much educated on that and are already measuring communication in the way that we are talking about here. But then you go to other regions and it's not yet well developed. I had a similar experience. So last week I was in India for the ICCO summit, where I spoke to a lot of professionals in the Indian communication space. Many of them were looking for ways to learn more about how do you measure past that outcome stage and more into the impact stage. And that is where the role of organizations like AMEC, I think, comes. I already shared in the chat something that a few of the speakers talked about, that the AMEC Integrated Evaluation Framework, the link in the chat that you can see there, is a really, really good resource which provides you a step-by-step journey for your for your campaign, and it really helps you stop and think and evaluate everything that you would like to do in terms of planning and measurement, because measurement starts before the campaign has begun. Measurement starts in the planning stage, and if you don't have a plan how to measure before you run the campaign, then your measurement is bound to be surface level. Another thing that will soon be included into the AMEC framework, but is still not included, so you can think of it on your own, is adding the new stakeholder in communication, and that is AI. AI and generative engines now can be considered a new stakeholder in our communications plans, so we need to plan for their objectives, meaning that you need to have a plan for GEO, generative engine optimization. How do you like to appear in answers of generative AI, and how your brand currently does. Do some research, and research can be done in a very simple matter. You can just write a lot of prompts in your favorite LLM, and by all means in many LLMs, not just one, please. And you can get very interesting results. I can give you an example with a client from my personal consultancy. So it's a large-scale sports car brand, which was looking to increase their presence in AI answers. However, the difference between SEO and GEO, so how Google does it and AI does it, is that in SEO, you can influence, for example, the answer of what is the fastest sports car. The fastest sports car is not only the one that is empirically tested to be the fastest, but it is the brand that uses this keyword the most on their website, for example, and the best way. But in AI, that doesn't happen. In AI, every single time when you ask what is the fastest sports car, it will give you the empirically tested fastest sports car, which is currently a Koenigsegg, and my client was not Koenigsegg. So here again, we go before we start running the campaign. We think about how do we want to position our car brand. If we cannot be the fastest, we cannot be the most luxurious, because that's always Rolls-Royce in AI answers. How do we get our audience? So we went back into all the data that they had from past experiences, and they know what their audience wants. Their audience wants to be excited. Their audience wants something different. They want something interesting. So we ended up on using the word exciting. What is the most exciting sports car? We did very quick research. The most exciting sports car, according to all AIs, was Tesla. Tesla is not even a sports car, first of all. But why did Tesla appear? Because Tesla is an AI-first company. They know how the AI works, and they position themselves first before everyone else. So now that even big legacy brands are catching up on this, now we had all this primary knowledge and information, and now we can run a campaign, and we know what we are measuring against. We want to be in the top 3 of the AI answer for the most exciting sports car. So we did the campaign, and then we measured against that. And now if you type, of course, I cannot name the client, but I can guarantee you that if you type what is the most exciting sports car, you will see it in the top 3. So yeah, that's one practical example of how you first go from thinking about what you want to measure at the end, constructing the campaign, going back to your roots and your data that you have from the past, and utilizing it to create a really impactful campaign at the end.
Thank you very much, Iskren. That was amazing, and I think it makes sense when you think about it in that light. Really just is about understanding these metrics and using them at the end of the day to work for you and towards your goal. And that is an amazing analogy that you gave us there. So Adalha, you run an independent agency, that's Nova, and we see an increased demand for accountability in PR. How can an agency such as that sustain creativity, while also adhering to data-driven evaluation frameworks?
So first of all, when you think of campaigns, you're already thinking about creative ways that you want to tell your story. When you think of any campaign that lands on your desk, you're thinking about creativity. And the creativity basically shapes the execution, of whatever campaign that you land on your desk. So you're thinking, and then the data is also how you look at the campaign that you've run, and did we do great? Did we not? And just like Iskren mentioned with the company, you're looking at ensuring that. So let me put it this way: we are currently in the world where there's so much noise, right? So everyone is looking for the most creative ways. Every agency is looking for the most creative ways to get the attention of the necessary stakeholders that they need to get in order to say we've gotten their attention. Now, the thing is, when you get the attention, the next thing you're thinking about is, what do you do with the attention? Do you retain them? Do you create brand loyalty? Do you adopt new customer base? Do you trigger a reaction? Is it a positive reaction? Is it a negative reaction? Do you get more validation of the product or the services that the client is offering? And so that's what the creativity is really about. But then these things that I just mentioned is where you start looking at your data. So I believe that creativity and data management, I feel like they marry themselves, because you need to use one to get one. You also want to use one to be able to measure the level of impact that the campaign has given. And so for every single step or for every single creative step you take out there, there's a way to measure it. Now, it depends on the measurable tools that you deploy in order to get that. And so for agencies, creativity is a core of how you kick off or launch some of your campaigns. But then what you have to now look at is, I have the campaign, I've launched it, have I refined? What is the narrative that I'm putting out? What is the response? How do I measure the response? When did I get the attention of the right stakeholders? Did I get new people? What was the cultural design? What was the storytelling like? Did the storytelling go out at the right time to the right people? And then look, if I had 100 before we started, do I have 300? And with the 300 that I have right now, are they buying into the new products? Are they telling their friends about it? Are they using the product? And then are they using it for short term or long term? So either way, you find out that creativity would always be at the core of every agency or every PR professional. And then while you have creativity, then you have the data. I believe that they come together, the match. So in terms of accountability and how we have to always use creativity, it's very, very important that we are creative in the work that we do. And even besides looking at the measurable tools, the measurement of it all, I believe that that's part of the profession. We want to be creative. We're in this profession to also be creative, to have fun, to tell stories in the best ways, to tell stories in fun ways, in serious ways, just however you're able to tell that story. I believe that's part of the joy of being a PR professional. So yeah, so creativity and data, they all go together.
Thank you very much, Adawa, for that. Amber, I want to ask the question, as communications leaders are increasingly looking to make that shift and move beyond vanity metrics, what frameworks or principles have you found to be most effective in linking outcomes to meaningful outcomes?
I love this question, and I'm going to say something that's already been mentioned because AMEC is one of my favorite organizations, and the integrated evaluation framework is just so useful. I think specifically for folks who haven't been doing this work so far or to date, it provides a really clear guideline for you. So it's a free online interactive tool that you can use, and it helps you think about in that sort of, as we're talking about, long-term or more strategic way, because you start with what you're trying to achieve for the business, and then you back it up. And I especially love it and go in and reference it often with clients and with my own team members, but it's got different examples of the metrics and the kinds of things that you can look at each of the different stages. So what are the inputs, what are the activities, outputs, outtakes, outcomes, and impact, and gives you information about how you might go about looking at what you have achieved in those different areas. So it's definitely one of my favorite ones. And then paired with that, the Barcelona principles are also something that I highly recommend that folks take a look at if you haven't already. So version 4 was released earlier this year, and it's just incredible. It's principles that outline sort of everything that we're talking about in this conversation, what you should do in terms of measurement and evaluation, and also equally what you should not do. So, AVEs are in there as something that you should be not using anymore. But they've got things like setting clear and measurable objectives are important to the work that we're doing, defining and understanding stakeholder audiences, and that you should look at outputs, outcomes, and impact. So I think between those two, the principles give you a really great foundational understanding of what this means, and then the integrated evaluation framework is really your step-by-step approach, and it also allows you to print in that format as well, so you can take that to clients, and you can use it in your own work, and you can see it all laid out in that way. So I would say those are my top two.
Thank you for that, Amber. And as an analyst myself, even within P+ Measurement Services, these are two frameworks that we work with on a day-to-day basis, and they guide, basically everything that we do in helping brands understand what their campaigns have done and what they could do better in future campaigns. So thank you very much for that. Moving on to the next question, Adedoyin, I want to call on you. How can communications leaders also across Africa build a system or skills, or even make that shift in mindset that is required to transition from reporting activities to demonstrating actual value and outcome?
Okay, so I think the first thing is learn what you don't know. And knowledge is power. Knowledge builds confidence. So first of all, gain the knowledge, learn the strategic communications framework, visit the AMEC website. Anyone that has gone through my training or watched my videos on YouTube, I always recommend follow AMEC, because even aside from the frameworks, there are case studies of how people across the world are applying this framework, and they're measuring the impact of the work that they do. Another person that I would recommend learning from is Jim McNamara. He has a video on evaluation, and he has this, I think it was at the last AMEC Summit, taxonomy of metrics. So even you're like, I don't even know where to start from, he has done the heavy lifting for you. It's just a document that breaks down the metrics, the activity, the metrics, what you should be looking at, what tools you can use to measure, whether qualitative or quantitative. And so that's the beginning part. Learn what you do not know. The second thing is application. How do I apply it within the context of my organization? And you need to start by building a culture of gathering data within your communications team. So you want to start a campaign. Do you have all the data that you need? Do you have all the information? Are you tracking even your social media data? It's funny how a lot of people are not even tracking their social media data. They're not collating it. They're not seeing what it's saying. When you bring data together, when you bring the numbers together, it actually speaks, it actually communicates. So start with that, bring it together, and then create frameworks within your organization that allows you to collate data, that allows you to look at trends on a maybe month to month or year on year level as well. Go through that rigor of consistent application, because when I teach communications professionals, one of the first things they say, this process is long, this and that, because hey, you've been doing things tactically for a very long time. However, if you commit to the process and do it consistently, it becomes second nature. Anyone that's coming to me now to do any kind of project, there are questions that I will ask ordinarily because I'm already used to going through the process. And so there are questions that I will ask. There's research that will be done. I saw a question in the comment section saying, what is the sample size, for example, of a research that would make clients convinced of a particular course of action? There is no one size fits all answer. But the thing is the information that you're getting compelling enough? Do you have enough budget? Because let's face it, a lot of times you don't even have enough budget to do research. But are you gathering enough sample? And let me use the example of a client that I did it for recently. They had it's an e-commerce company, and they had a disconnect with their clients. And I insisted that let's do research. I want to speak to your salespeople. I want to do an internal research and then external. And really found out that what the salespeople were communicating to the clients was totally different than what the organization was putting as its value proposition. And that's what we call a say-do gap. And so if the people internally are confused about what you do as an organization, surely and clearly the people externally are equally going to be confused. And so asking me to develop a strategy to solve that problem without solving that internal gap, that internal issue, is already dead on arrival. So it will look like I don't know what I'm doing because I didn't do research to see that, hey, the fundamental problem is that there is a gap in the understanding and the training of the call center people, the people responsible for communicating this value to the audience. And then when we did the external research, we saw that the value proposition that the audience actually wanted was different from what the company was actually articulating. And so messaging needed to change. So all of that comes with knowledge. All of that comes from knowing what to look out for, what metrics am I, so if I want to start this campaign, what questions am I supposed to be asking? What data do I need to be gathering? And I will end with saying that every single person try and develop a playbook for your processes internally. It is so needed. We need, for a while now, we've been doing communications very intuitively because there's the creative aspect, but there is the science to it. Put things down, document it. This is how we do it. These are the processes. These are the steps we need to take, because those are the things that will optimize success for you and help you to deliver in terms of outcomes and results at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adedun, for that. Also, David, as a leader in helping brands navigate limited resources, how do you ensure that communications efforts remain measurable, impactful, and also aligned with business priorities?
So, how to balance their ambition with limited resources is clarity. I think you have to come to the table with clarity. You need to understand what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to do with the campaign. Even before you start the campaign, you decide what the impact of this campaign would look like, or this impact of this initiative would look like for you, and what you are trying to achieve with that, the objective, the goals. So that would inform how you are going to approach whatever. Because of the budget, I think that's even another conversation entirely. But you can still make impact knowing what you are, setting to do and having the clarity of mind before you approach it. And I also think it's also important that you have this insight-driven communication plan ahead of the campaign. So instead of trying to do everything at once, you can just sort of like streamline it down to knowing, okay, this is what I think, based on research, because you also need data and the research. You must have gathered data from your other departments because you don't work in silo. You work with the sales team, you work with the marketing team, you work with the finance and then the operations team, just so you have a context of what the operations of the business is like, and then you can collect data, and from those data that you've gathered, you can sort of like figure out what's the first step to do here. What are we trying to do with everything, and how do I get to be strategic with this? So this can be supposed to be for reputation building. It's supposed to be for just so that we can have more credibility in the public. Is it just for us to gather like press mentions? We need to figure out like what exactly we are going to be doing in this campaign, and then you also need to prioritize your measurement loop, because this ensure that you are tracking what story generates with the most engagement, what sort of messaging is aligning with the general public or your stakeholders. So you first of all need to understand have a clarity of what you're trying to achieve, and then you now begin to, based of the clarity that you've had and based of the plan that you've worked on, you begin to figure out what it would work, and then you measure them accordingly.
All right, thank you very much, David, for that. So I want to jump into more predictive conversations, and we want to look into the new year based on trends that are emerging and just already existing norms. When we look into 2026, what are some things that you think people should, practitioners rather, should focus on, like emerging methodologies or tools that people can adopt in their day-to-day practices? And Iskren, I would like to start off with you. Just give us your...
Yep. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for repeating myself, but it is a very important one, GEO measurement. Right now, still about 70% of people still use Google to search, but you can see that already 30% are only using AI platforms. That is even more pronounced within younger generations, with up to 68%, I think, of Gen Z are already using only AI platforms to search online, and in Gen Alpha that's even higher, so it's close to 90% there in recent research. That poses a lot of challenges for us as communicators and for brands who want to transition and who want to appeal to those audiences who are increasingly more involved in purchasing decision, the labor market, and many other spheres of life. I will share, I'm sorry for sharing so many resources in chat, but I hope they're useful. I will share a resource from Macrack, our company. We did a research about what is AI reading. So where does AI cite its information sources from? And you can see in this research that over 90% of sources are from earned media. So that means that ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini read mostly earned media, or read mostly PR-generated stuff, or owned media, of course. So that puts the PR professional at the center of the future of those organizations, since we see that only 3% of AI citations come from marketing, come from paid media. That means that we as PR and communication professionals need to know these things, need to bring these things forward to our CEOs, to our business leaders, to inform them that the future of reputation management and brand communication is rooted in good PR and good communications. So that is how we can cement our place as communicators at the boardroom. We can earn budgets that way, and we can, but only if we measure it right, only if we use the right tools to measure our work in a substantial way. So invest in GEO measurement, invest in campaigns that trigger and influence AI answers, because that is going to be the future, and globally as well.
Thank you very much, Iskren. Also, Amber, given your role on the IPR Measurement Commission, I think I would like to hear from you also on that question, emerging trends for the next.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what Iskren just said. I think that AI becomes increasingly important. I do also want to say that there is a flip side to this, right? So as folks are looking to AI and understanding that communications is valuable in helping feed the engine, I do think it becomes even more important for us to be able to show the impact of what we're doing. So you have to track these kinds of things, right? So how do you weave that into a story, into a narrative, to show your executive team that what you're doing is critical to how they're showing up in these spaces where more and more people are looking? So I think there's even more imperative for us to be able to demonstrate that what we're doing matters in the terms of the business and what the business is trying to accomplish, because lots of folks are also looking at how they can become more efficient with AI, right? Folks are looking at, well, can we stop using these teams, or can we shrink our team slightly and use AI agents in order to do the same work? And so this is where communicators, I think, really need to step up and say, you still need us, you need the strategic thinking, you need the human element in order to do what we are trying to do here. So I do think that that is going to become increasingly important as we're looking at just, how folks are rearranging their teams. And I do think that there is an element of also using AI to make your measurement better. We know that AI can do things like sentiment coding. It can, help you in your research. It shouldn't be exclusively what you use for it, but it is something that you can use increasingly. And so I think how do you use that to your advantage is an ongoing conversation that's happening in the industry right now. How do you make sure that the data that you're feeding into it is good, is clean, and then how do you use it to make your job more efficient so that you can spend more time on the strategic element? So AI in sort of all the areas, I think, is something that communicators need to increasingly focus on.
Thank you very much for that, Amber. Also, to tackle this question, I want to call on Adaoha. You've worked with global as well as local brands. What trends do you foresee in 2026 becoming the norm?
Yeah, just to, I think Amber and Iskren kind of have addressed some of that. And I mean, in 2026, we're going to look at more AI integrated strategies. We are going to also, within the AI space as well, it's also very important to understand what's it called, the ethics that guide AI, the use of AI in some of the campaigns that we're going to be running, or in our use of AI. So understanding the ethical AI requirements, very, very important. It's also very important that we also pay attention. Like I always tell every professional at the beginning of every year, you need to listen, not just listen to, not just listening for listening's sake, but to also observe, because you also have brand activism. A bit of brand activism is going to come up in 2026, because right now you have more people paying attention. You have more people that are trying to personalize certain things or products or campaigns to their own use. So there's a bit of brand activism that would see pop up more in 2026. There is also the aspect of, because there's so much noise, we as PR professionals have to pay more attention to responses when it comes to crisis management. Creative thinking is going to be back again, because while we have people that are very inclined towards the use of AI, there are still people that are still fighting it. There'll still be, I need to think, I need to be more creative. So you're going to have some of these trends pop up. You're going to also, it's also very important that we, in not just looking at the AI, the crisis management, brand activism, we're also looking at from the narrative intelligence side of things, because the narrative intelligence is very important. people are paying more attention. People are taking their time to understand brands across different digital touch points. So you're making sure that, just like Iskrin said in one of the questions, that even in the use of some of the tools, whether it's the geo or your clients or the campaigns we run are well represented in these tools, in these AI tools, that they also give the right information, they will give the credible media report, the industry reports, the expert commentary. It's very, very important. These are things that will come up. And I mean, finally, for me, it would also be, again, outcomes, over the output measurements. It's very, very important. The traditional metrics are great. But it's no longer a vanity metrics kind of thing. It's now more from business impact, long-term impact, the sentiment, what that campaign has done, and that is more what we're going to be seeing in 2026. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adaha, for that. I want to talk to Chris. You speak often about the theory of experiential communication. And how can this framework, help redefine how communicators assess, the depth of audience engagement and real world outcomes?
Thank you, Stanley. One of the observations, maybe I should touch on a little bit of trends. One of the things that I have observed happening very, very immensely is there is already a trajectory of communication beyond words. Because we like to write a lot and pitch and, peso paid and shared on that aspect of things is what has frustrated communications a lot. And that is why everybody believes they can do communication, because everybody can talk and everybody can write. So what is this other thing that you can say you do that wouldn't make me give an engineer a job or a doctor your job? Because if I can talk, you don't need to be here, right? So that is a very big trend that is going on. Of course, I also wanted to touch on the fact that in 2021, 2022, I was invited by one of the biggest hospitals in Africa to help them with public relations support. And I told them two things. Number one, before I start, I would like to study your reports for the last 10 years, your public relations annual reports. And I'm going to go into the media monitoring tools and I'm going to generate your mentions for the last 10 years. And I studied them for 3 months without doing any other thing, 3 months just analyzing them. And I discovered patterns. If they wanted to kick out a CEO, it would be a plan. If they wanted to go on strike, the doctors, it would be a plan. And you see, you can't discover these things until you have historical data. You've got to analyze time over time and find layers and get to, that is why PR is defined as analysis of trends, prediction of the consequences of those trends, advisory of leaders based on the insights, and implementation of programs for mutual beneficial relationships. That said, at the time I was doing this, and the reason why I did this for 3 months and why I had to mention it is because I wish AI was there. I would have gotten these answers within less than 5 minutes. I had to do it for 3 months. That said, regarding the theory of experiential communication, this is a theory that talks about, and I came up with this theory having analyzed EMEC, analyzed Barcelona principles, gotten the differences between verbal communication and non-verbal communication, all the frustrations around why communication seems to be dismissed every time. And I realized that, so what is this non-verbal communication? Because oftentimes we've been taught and we've talked about non-verbal communication only in 2 ways. That is about gestures and body language. That is the confine within which we put non-verbal communication. But then you realize that even a product communicates. If I buy a car that spoils often, or a phone that breaks down every time, or a phone that blows, or I bought into an airplane that, crashes, that is a product that communicates. So that is a message. A service communicates. If Frontline isn't doing their job, if I go to the website of a certain organization and I'm looking for something and I can't find it, or it's so hidden, that is a message. That is a service, because it is more to do with touch points. So basically what the theory talks about is the experience. It talks about the experiences, the lived experiences of stakeholders as a message, as communication. You don't need to do so much. You just got to think about how you can create very nice products that speak to a certain stakeholder, which is why they go to the shelves and they don't take any other, they take this. Because they love the product. And every time they go to another, they say, no, I've got to go back to the other. Okay? So the product communicates in itself. And so you've got to create better products every time as you communicate with them, because the more they purchase, the more they are giving you feedback by saying, we love this, even if they're not going to write anywhere. You better hope that they also give a little bit of sentiment around the product. Of course, there's service experience. And in this case, I think I've already touched on it, where we're saying it is about the touch points, and what are the touch points communicating? Because you look at the journey of a customer, look at the journey of a stakeholder from the time they go to bed to the time they wake up, to the time what is the product they are using, to the time they get frustrated and they want to seek services and they go to Google and they are being called by the organization, whether through customer experience, and they are being engaged in whatever form. How do they feel about how they have been treated by the frontline? Then there is human interaction. So there are 7 dimensions. I'm already on 2. The third is human interaction. Beyond the organization itself, how are these colleagues within themselves engaging? Who is treating who how, and how warmly and how negatively, to the extent that somebody is excited to come and work and deliver as best as they could. Of course, the 4th is operational alignment. So oftentimes, and this is where the biggest problem comes in, sometimes, and not sometimes, many times, communication people say things that are not happening in the organization, or the contradictory things. So we're saying we're doing very well and what have you, to the extent that we are going to even spin messages and inflate numbers and, come up with the rosy things to say, which are not where the stakeholders are sitting. They're wondering, is this the same organization based on what I'm reading? Is what they are saying and what they're doing one and the same? They don't look the same. It is a message. So do I trust you, or do I look for somebody I can trust, or another organization I can trust? Leadership integrity is a message. How would you have a CEO who is corrupt and is telling you about how they are trying to improve systems, and the next week they are going to be corrupt again? There's another scandal being announced. So leadership integrity, how do you treat people against what you tell them? If I tell you I'm going to raise your salary within the next month, and it's 6 months later and nothing has happened, that is leadership integrity, and that is a message in itself. Once you have done all those things, then there is the element of surprise and delight, which is also shortened as spectacle. You've got to give us new things, new ways of experiencing things, to be able to give us an opportunity to talk about you and to always come back to you and to remember you. And once you have done all these things, you realize you have not talked about the writing part and the speeches and all those articles and op-eds you have to do. At the end of the day, everything I have talked about, the things that we do, which I would like to call them PESO, paid and shared owned, complement these 6 things. That is what I wanted to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for breaking that down for us, Chris. I'll take one question for Adedoyin. Through the trainings you do and advisory work, you work with big brands and big foundations like the Gates Foundation and even MasterCard Foundation. What have you learned about embedding measurement as part of organizational culture as opposed to just a compliance tax?
Okay, so I think first of all, we shouldn't see this as a tick box thing. I think we've said it over and over again that you really have to think about measurement right from the very beginning. And it has to now become the way we do things. It has to become, this is something that we must do to get the results. And so one of the things that I've seen is just that ability to think about the fact that what exactly do we want to see at the end of the day, and then what do we need. When I'm teaching, I like to give the example of, how do you know that you've added weight? You know because you stepped on the scale, and if you used to see 60 kg before and you see 70 kg, you know that, hey, I've added 10 kg. Or you have your dress that, you know, fits normally, but the day it's a little bit snug, you know that, okay, either the dress shrunk or I've added weight. And so from your perspective, if you want to increase awareness, and we like saying awareness a lot, if you want to change perception, you want to change sentiment, how do you know if it has changed if you don't know what your starting point is? So for every single person here, please get your baseline data and store this, like literally create your folder with important metrics that are valuable for your organization. I've given you I posted the MEL manual from Jim McNamara that has metrics. You can use that to start building your own, almost like your own communications dashboard. The second thing is build a culture of social listening. I've seen that Israel has posted about Mokrak in the chat. It's very, very important. And the thing about it is that some of these tools are quite expensive, coming from the perspective of those of us that work within the African continent and organizations that don't have a lot of budget, right? But these social tools really help you to really understand the conversations that your target audience is having, the conversations going on in the sectors, some of them help you to benchmark with the competitors, because these are all data that you can begin to gather, and then you bring the different departments to have conversations around what you are seeing. Communications, you can give feedback to products about what the market is saying. Is this the right product? Will this product land well? The name we want to give this product, is it going to be dead on arrival in Mozambique because it means something totally different? This is the feedback we can begin to give when we actually collate and pay attention to the data. And for it to be ingrained in any organization, honestly, there has to be training and there has to be learning. And if there isn't training from an organizational perspective, because again, we know that some organizations, don't let me say a lot, don't really train their comms teams, which shouldn't be the case. But for yourself, please get the training and learning that you need, so that it becomes that it's the way we do things here and how you develop your results. And I would like to end by saying, look, the reality of it is that there's a lot that we need to know as communications professional, and I always encourage cross-learning. Follow, I've said it here, follow AMEC, follow the professional associations, join the webinars. I've benefited from learning what my colleagues are doing in Europe, in America, just learning best practices from them, learning the tools. Yes, you have to contextualize it if you're working in Africa, but it just really opens your mind to, hey, this is how this person is taking information, using data, for example, and making decisions. It was in a session that I realized, one of the tools that I use is Brand24, and I used it to spot a market opportunity for a client, something that I learned from a colleague that when I joined the webinar. So please open your mind to this, learn across board and collaborate within yourselves as well, because again, some of these tools may be expensive, but you may realize there may be other tools that people are using that is also delivering results, but you wouldn't know if you don't ask questions or if you don't partake in some of these learning sessions like you are doing now. So yeah, that's what I would say. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Adedoyin, for that. I want to call on David, reflecting on your consulting experience and authorship. What practical framework or approach do you use to track progress for visibility and value?
Yeah, so thank you very much for that question. So one thing consulting and writing has taught me is that visibility doesn't matter if it doesn't move anything. So no matter how much visibility you want to invest in, no matter how much you want to do to get all this visibility, if it's not moving any needle in terms of like your business output or business progress, then it still boils down to nothing. So perception, behavior, trust, and opportunities, all of those things needs to be at the core of what drives your communication approach and what drives your visibility approach. So if you're going to be centering your visibility on just for vanity and just for visibility sake, then you might not be moving any needle. I do have a framework that I use to pump out to measure my campaigns and see to just measure like what the visibility is like. I always start sort of like understand by defining what the narrative shift is like and what I want to create with the narrative. And once that is clear, I always trace that in 3 layers. I track the engagement. I see like what are the right people paying attention to this narrative. What is the interactions like? The investors mentions what is it like for if my clients' approach is to drive investors' attention to their campaigns. I check the industry peer signals. I check all of these community tractions, and then I now come down to see what action these people take on this campaign. What is happening? Is something happening based off the visibility? Is something happening, based off the messaging? Are we getting thought leader invitation to speak at conferences based off like the campaign that we just run for visibility? Are we getting requests from investors to meet with the clients? So all of those things are what would now, check if we are still in sync with our visibility approach. And then this now then show like there's a clean line between like this is storytelling and momentum, because all of this compiles to build that momentum for your organization or for the brand that you represent. So as a communication expert, it's important that we are not just approaching visibility just for visibility's sake and just for trend's sake. We need to be intentional about like whatever we do and ensure that it's also contributing to the business outlook, and then it's also moving in the do.
Thank you very much, David, for that. Just to quickly draw our attentions to the comment box. So the video will be available on the P+ Measurement Services YouTube channel, where you can also see previous events and also get learnings from those. I have a couple questions here, and I will just throw these questions. I'll pick one or two and throw them open to our speakers, and whoever's interested in answering these questions might probably just signify. So the first question is from Adewale. In PR campaign, strategic planning and measuring impact irrespective of the tools, how important is it? How important is the media department in an organization in carrying out success stories for clients and agencies? I think question again, if we didn't get it. So as speakers, if anyone wants to tackle that question.
So apologies, I didn't get it. I think my network went off for a bit.
All right. So from Adewale, he's asking, in PR campaign, strategic planning and measuring impact irrespective of the tools, how important is the media department in an organization in carrying out success stories for clients and agencies?
Okay, can I take that? I think at the end of the day, success stories are what everybody is looking for. If you are telling the story of testimonials, for instance, that is validation enough for me to be able to prove that I need to be associated with this organization. I need to have a relationship with this organization. Remember, at the end of the day, we are funneling, right? And if I'm funneling, and we have now talked about GEO and SEO and every other thing, or we are, if it's stories on the ground, it is about the success stories that validate the existence of an organization and the longevity of an organization. That is the importance, really. But at the end of the day, the question is, how do you evaluate the quality of a success story? According to who do you say this is a success? Everybody says their story is the best. Okay, so at the end of the day, the question is, what is this success story, and how do we agree, all of us here, the 55 of us in this room, that this is indeed a good success story? That everybody says, yes, this is indeed, and others say, no, I think there's a better success story. by another organization. So let me use the other. So at the end of the day, you go back to, as we talk about success stories, we've got to look at the quality of the programs, the quality of the vision, the quality of the products and services. All those, then when we begin to tell the stories, we are now able to say, yeah, this is indeed a good or a good success story.
Thank you very much, Chris, for that. I trust you've done justice to that question. I don't know if any other speaker wants to pitch in on that. All right, so just one more question that I find that's really interesting. Do you have any advice for a comms professional working with an NGO or non-profit organization where a product or a service is not being sold?
Okay, maybe I can start here since I have experience in NGO as well. I've been a comms professional in NGO and now I'm advising as well quite a large multinational NGO on their communication campaign. My advice, first of all, is that it's not like you're not selling something. You are still selling something. You need to secure donations, you need to secure funding, you need to secure reputation for your NGO, and again, to prove impact. So even with an NGO, what is even more important of how you measure your impact is both a societal impact and a communications impact, which are very much more linked. So I would say even a communication function is a lot more exposed within an NGO rather than a company, because in a company you can maybe hide or be supported by the marketing department, while usually an NGO doesn't have a marketing department. So I would say that you need to own the conversations, you need to own all of the cycle of preparing a campaign, and think about your stakeholders. And one of your stakeholders is the people who are funding you, regardless if that's government or private institutions or single donations by people. These are still money-generating activities, and your primary goal is for your NGO to exist. You need to secure funding. So you are still fighting for monetary gains, but in a different way. So I would say just keep aligned on who your stakeholders are and measure against that as well.
Yeah, I could also add on to that. Okay. Go ahead, you can go. Okay. Yeah, so as Iskrev said, you are actually selling something, and the perspective that I would like to add on is using the data that you have to also inform program design, because yes, program is very separate from communication, but the truth is that sometimes programs, they go into communities and design programs that are not really the most effective, but you as communications, because you listen to the community, you get feedback, you get the data, you can actually influence program design so that you make sure that it is in alignment with what the donor or the people that are funding want to see. And then documentation of the impact. One thing that I always say, because I also consult with a lot of nonprofits, is the communications team is usually under-resourced, especially if they're not a global INGO. So you also need to build communication competencies within your organization, making sure that the people who are going to the field can collect the data and the stories that you can use at the end of the day. That is very, very important. If they have done a program or we're doing an activity, what are the results? What are the impacts on the people? How is it making a difference? Whether it is we want to solve a water problem, a sexual reproductive health issue, what is the impact? And we have tangible proof of some of these things, because it's not just to say, oh, we impacted 100 people. Who are these people? What is the tangible experience? And then you as a communication professional bringing the ethical part of it to say, there is dignity in our storytelling and how we collect the data of the people. So you have a very critical role to play working in the NGO space. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Adedoyin. Adawa.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Adedoyin said. She's already said it. And for me, it's majorly from, because I think Adedoyin and Iskren have addressed it, but it's majorly from the documenting side of it. It's very important because I consult for NGOs as well. The documenting is one of the things that I find that some of them struggle with. And like Adedoyin has said, having a program design would help you align with some of the things that you need to do. Because an NGO is selling something. It might not necessarily be, oh, you're out there, look at me, But you have to document some of the things, because when you document some of these things, that would also look at the stakeholders would pay attention. They'll pay attention more. We consult for, and one of the NGOs we consult for instance, provides water to underserved communities in Nigeria, and they provided water to over 4 communities in 4 different states in Nigeria. And when we look at the impact, some of these communities are communities that they've not had access to clean water in over 30 years. And here this NGO comes, and we're able to look at the number of people in the communities, look at the journey, the travel to even get water in the previous years, look at all this, and everything is documented, everything is put out there. So you'll have to ensure that the communication is clear. Because every NGO that launches, everyone launches with an objective. They have a mission, they have a vision. So when you look at the program design, does that align? And then when you look at the communication efforts that you're making, does that also align with the vision and the mission of the NGO? So these are the things that you have to take into consideration when communicating within the NGO space.
Stanley, I just wanted to add a little bit about co-creation. And there's a story told in my country where an NGO went to provide a program in a certain corner of the country, and it was about water. So they realized that women in this community do not go far off to fetch water, and they decided they're going to bring taps into the homes. And when they came back to measure or to observe or to monitor, they realized no woman is using the water. They're still going to the springs and to wherever they go, kilometers away. And the question was why? They realized they go there because they are frustrated by their husbands. So this is an opportunity to go and share their stories. And somebody is coming to take away this opportunity by bringing taps into the home. And that then becomes the gap where part of what missed was co-creation, to be able to discuss with these women to understand why they do this, why they do this. Is it because there is lack of water, or what is the reason? Had they been told that, we go to share our stories earlier, I think Iskren mentioned part of the planning is before the planning. Yeah. So if you had engaged them and they told you this is what we face, then maybe you would have beautified the spring where they go, and maybe added another one far off from their homes. So yes, co-creation becomes a very, very major part of communication and what communication needs to do. The other then is control site versus environmental site. If I am running a program here in the environmental site, how do I compare in terms of the difference? Yes, there is the initial measurement, but what is the neighboring boundary doing? What is the neighbor just there a few kilometers away from me that I am not affecting faring? How are they faring? You should be able to tell that, yes, they are going through the same problems, but what I am doing here has changed the life of these people compared to the ones that I never touched. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. David, Amber, I don't know if any of you have anything to add.
I think all the great stuff has already been said.
All right, David. Okay, so I'm guessing that is all. We promised to take 2 hours of your day, and we are more than grateful for all our speakers have been able to share with us here today. As we wrap up today's conversation, I am truly inspired by the stellar lineup that we've been able to gather today. Practitioners, leaders in industry who have joined us from all over the world and from different sectors. Your dedication is constantly shaping the way we measure, and continuous learning as well, and improvement within this space, and raising the bar continuously is what really gives purpose to what we do as PR practitioners and communications experts. Thank you once again for your presence, your insights, and your commitment. Let us leave today ready to apply everything we've learned. And I'm sure most of the questions that have been tackled, especially the ones dropped in the comment sections, really serve to better our practices, better our mindsets, especially listening to our speakers from the beginning of today's session right up until the end. The message was the same. We need to shift from, a vanity to actually putting value behind everything we do. as PR practitioners. We can't just drop numbers and expect people to understand. We need to explain to them what it is that these numbers mean. What does this graph tell us? What does this graph impact on the business in the long term, even short term, eventually? So thank you all for the knowledge we've shared today, and together we can move from outputs to outcomes and continue to measure what truly matters. Thank you all once again, and God bless. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.